Your jump to freelance starts here. Welcome to the jump moment.
Have you ever had a moment where you've realized maybe I've been handed someone else's purpose? This is a really interesting challenge that I have heard as I've had conversations with different creatives, specifically creatives who are leaving some sort of a cause-based organization. Typically, we think of those as a church, so you're leaving ministry. It could be a nonprofit organization. Whatever it is that you're doing, if it's very cause-oriented, if your buy-in lessens, you're not just walking away from a job, you're walking away from a purpose. At least that's how it feels. So having done that, I want to talk a little bit about it, in part because I didn't really have a lot of people that I could talk to about this, because everybody that I worked alongside, that I had meaningful relationships with professionally, they were all in. They weren't thinking about leaving. They weren't kind of challenging this idea that this purpose wasn't their purpose. And so I want to talk about it a little bit, and then I want to give you 4 different things that I have found to be really helpful. This is actually a portion of one of the Freelance Foundation's conversations that we had recently. It seemed like it was really helpful from the feedback that I got from sharing it in the school group. And so, plug for the school group. Would love to have you be a part of it if this is something that you find to be helpful. Before we jump in, I have a favor to ask. Would you consider writing a review of the podcast on your favorite platform? Wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, a review and a star rating is super helpful for others who are considering listening to the podcast themselves. Thank you for considering it. Okay, so you go to work one day and you pitch an idea and resistance happens. Now, there's kind of 2 different lanes here. The first is, let's figure out how to build some resiliency in our job, right? Let's figure out how we can position our message more effectively. Let's listen better to leadership or to the department leads or whoever it is we're pitching it to. Let's understand their problem a little bit better and see if we can build traction toward a good solution and maybe even our idea getting adopted. There's a lot of things that we can do professionally to improve our ability to move forward. I lived through that for many years. I actually learned a ton. I actually wrote a book on it for church communication specifically. It's called Watch Your Language, if you want to check it out. A lot of the principles will absolutely transfer across space. It's not just a church ministry book. It really is how do creatives and non-creatives interact with one another and work together. But there is another part of this conversation that I think sometimes we bury it in these other principles. You should figure out how to get better at communicating. Really what's happening though is we're falling out of alignment with the mission of the organization. The purpose that has been handed to us from this organization, it's not our purpose. I don't care about this anymore. Or I'm trying to care about this and the organization won't let me. This is one that for me personally, that's exactly where I began to see some of the cracks happening. Well, look, I'm bought in on this, and I believe that this is a way to move forward in a meaningful and an effective way. No one else is willing to lean into this. No one else is adopting these strategies. In fact, everyone is just resisting them. So there's something that begins to happen where you start asking yourself the question, am I willing to operate at my 30% in order to be a part of this? Do I believe in the mission that much? I don't think that that's ever where God intends for us to be. I don't believe that the right fit for us and the right place for us is one where we have to significantly reduce our capacity or take some of our skills off the table or present fewer ideas, challenge fewer norms. I just don't think that that's the way that God's giftings in our life works. If we're gifted in certain areas, the goal is to exercise those gifts, to practice them, to grow them. Now, we want to lean into our gifts, but we don't want to have the perspective that we're just masters of all of these things. Having to hone and develop your gifting is different than not being allowed to leverage your gifts. And so that's really where a lot of the tension, I think, emerges for many of us who feel like it's time to move on. That's one of the signs that comes out. We're no longer able to operate in the way that we believe that we best operate. Sometimes people will say you're just bad at your job. Some people will not even say anything. Unfortunately, I find that that's the most common thing. People just sort of like marginalize you and you no longer have a voice of influence in any area, including the one that you're hired to specifically lead. So with that said, it puts us in a position where we have to start asking those questions. What am I here for? What am I here in this organization for? But also, what am I here to accomplish at a larger level? There's a fallacy that begins to creep into our mindset when we're in an environment where we have been marginalized, whether that be intentional or just a level of resistance to change that is stifling us. For some reason, we buy into this idea that this is the only place for impactful things to happen. This is the only place where ministry happens. This is the only place where this certain change happens, or this cause is being moved forward. There's something about this kind of tribalism that develops when we're inside an organization that's particularly troublesome for us as we're thinking about moving on. And in particular, as we're falling out of love with the mission of the organization that we're serving. And when I say that, I don't mean we're leaving the church because we're not Christians anymore. And I don't even mean that we don't agree with the mission of the church. I mean, we don't have a role here. We don't have a place or a way or a pathway to contribute meaningfully to this organization and in the long run, to the purpose itself. But then we start thinking, well, this is the only place, this is the only church doing good ministry. Not true. This is the only organization doing this type of work. Not true. My wife worked with foster youth and emancipated youth. When we first got married, she was working at a place that did work in these areas. And so it's easy to think, oh, that's the only place that does it. It's not the only place that does it. That is a place that did. I thought they did a great job. So it's not even to throw shade on what they were doing, but it's not the only way to accomplish that mission. So if you care about foster youth, you can go to a lot of different organizations and work toward that end. So as you uncover these challenges, the big elephant in the room is this really your passion or your purpose? Or is this what the organization is positioning you against? I found that something was emerging in me that had not been present in a vocal way early in my career, and it became very vocal late in my career. And in essence, the short version of it is, I served on church staff for 16 years of my career, and I no longer felt content to serve a church. I felt really compelled to serve many churches. And so that's what I'm doing now. And so the conversation that I really want to kind of spark, I guess, in you is, if you're in that unsettled place, or in that, you feel that a little bit of that disturbance around the purpose of the organization that you're in, I want to invite you to consider what I have found to be 4 different ways that really help us figure out the why behind what we're doing. The 4 things that I find, and these are through a creative lens, but I think that they're pretty applicable across trades as well. So the first is craftsmanship. The second is service. The third is mission. And the last one is lifestyle. So I'm just going to go through. I have, my keynote up on my screen. I'm not sharing it to the YouTube video, but the 4 things here, we're going to start with craftsmanship. The thing that really kind of is a hallmark of a craftsmanship oriented passion or drive, I'm going to call these your why. If your why is craftsmanship, I love doing this well. There's something about the excellence of doing a thing. That is what drives you when you are a craftsman, when craftsmanship is your why. A good friend of mine, he's a craftsman. The quality of his craft and his trade drive him. It's what wakes him up and pushes him to pursue the way that he pursues. A question that really, I think, helps expose this in us. What kind of work makes me lose track of time? I've been finding, for me personally, content creation is that. I've been leaning into it a little bit more freely than I used to. I've always put up these hurdles and these barriers in my life. Man, I just lose track of time when I'm doing this stuff. It's so much fun for me. What kind of work makes you lose track of time? And then to align that a little bit with your skill set, where do you feel most confident and capable? This is a complicated one. If you've been spending time in an organization that maybe hasn't valued your gifts and your skills in the way that they should, or that are an accurate reflection of your gifts and your skills, this may be a little bit complicated. You may not feel like you're confident or capable in certain areas, but work to kind of pull that layer back a little bit. Where do you have the most experience? Where have you done most of your investment of work? There was a season for me while I was on a church staff serving in a communications role where I told my wife, I don't know if I could serve at any church in America in communications. And I'm very thankful for her response. She's like, that's ridiculous. You literally are serving in that job right now. And it's not like you're on the brink of getting fired. You're not on the brink of losing your job. You're looking for another job because you want a new environment, because you don't feel like you're able to kind of flex into your job. So it's not a reflection of you're not capable. It's a reflection of you're just not allowed to do your job. And it was a really helpful readjustment for me. And so I challenge you with the same thing. What are you good at doing? What's the way that your mind thinks? Are you a problem solver? Are you an encourager? Are you a fixer of things? Like, what is it that you're good at? What are you capable of doing? What are you confident about? What's ironic to me now is that the freelance business that I run is focused on helping churches with church communications. So not only am I qualified to do that at one church, I'm qualified now to be able to do that at multiple churches concurrently. So clearly, there's a confidence and a capability in that help me as I pursue my craft in that area. So craftsmanship, that's the first of these whys. What is it that really gets you going in the area of craftsmanship? And maybe craftsmanship's not your thing. Maybe that's not your drive. Maybe this next one, service, maybe that's your drive. I want to help this type of person. The service-oriented why really is one that is focused on a particular type of person that you want to help serve. And so it ranges the whole spectrum of what that could look like. But service is, who do I feel drawn to help or support? Is there a person, a circumstance? In my first job, my first church job, I worked alongside somebody who really, really cared about immigrants and about education and empowering first generation Americans. So you have a family that immigrates and then they have kids. And so now their kids are first generation Americans. Education is complicated. So he was really, really passionate about that space. So for him, the why was service, and there was a very specific type of person that he felt compelled to help or support. And so for the service-minded why, that's what you're looking for, is who is it? Who's the type of person that I'm trying to help? Another way to ask that question is, what problem do I want to help solve for them? So this is going a layer deeper. So in the case of the example, the story here is, I want to help them navigate education. I want to help them navigate college specifically. I mean, if you really want to drill down. So if you're service focused, if your why is driven out of service, you're going to look for the type of person that you're looking to help and the way that you're looking to help them. What is the problem that you're looking to help them solve? The next one here is mission. Mission is now, I want to lead this change. And so you think, well, service and mission, those sound similar. The difference here is that mission is typically a larger, more abstract idea. So service is very tangible. I want to help first generation Americans figure out college. Okay, very personal, very human. You could put a name to that. Mission is, I want to lead this change. And so this is a much larger idea. In some cases, this could be, I almost think like agenda driven. I posted a video recently and it was about, are we worshiping the algorithm? Like, what is happening if we're creating content and all we're caring about is how the algorithm responds to our content, not how the human being on the other side responds? Okay, that's more mission oriented, right? That's not individual, that's not, oh, Dave, I hope Dave gets this message. This is, we got to change the way that we holistically as creatives are thinking about creating online. We need to remain or keep and protect the integrity of our creative work. And we need to, instead of, listening to the algorithm or trying to posture it for the algorithm, we need to create what we believe in. It's a message that keeps showing up in your work. So what is this thing you keep coming back to? For me, there's a couple things. Mission is very big for me. And so much of what I do is mission oriented. Mission is, freelance can be something that frees you up to accomplish your mission or your purpose in life. Freelance is something that allows you to live the life that you want in a purpose-filled way. It's not about, sipping martinis on the beach. It's about being able to be present for your family. Those are the types of things for me. It's very mission-oriented. Freelance is just a tool or just a mechanism that allows me to be present and care for my family. This idea will always keep coming up in my work. That's the mission, is I want people to have a life that allows them to actually live life, care about the priorities. So you can even tell I'm a little bit more passionate about this. I have a what's talked about, like, yeah, make sure the transition on your video edit, that's the craftsman why. That's not my why. Craftsmanship is great, and I'm enjoying pursuing craftsmanship in certain areas. But man, mission, that gets me up in the morning. And then the other thing here is, what do I wish more people understood? I got a long list, like I could do so many different businesses or movements or social media accounts, whatever. Like, what do I wish more people understood? And it's funny because I look back over my life and I look back at all these different random freelance ventures. What happened over all of them? So some friends and I launched a card game called Mealtime Sabotage. And it's a card game where you need to complete a meal, and the goal is to complete your meal with the lowest calories possible. The twist in the game is that you are sabotaging other people's meals once you finish. So you finish, you could drop a big fat entree on somebody else and screw up their calorie count. You could also put ranch in their water. The whole game is about sabotaging each other's meals. Well, after we launched the game, we looked at it and we're like, this is actually a really compelling education, like a calorie education type of tool. It's like, interesting. There's something deeper here than that. I launched a barbecue YouTube channel. And what's it about? It's about how to make barbecue as easy as possible for people who are considering to jump in. What do I wish more people understood? Barbecue is easier than you think it is. Here's the information that you need that will unlock your ability to enjoy this hobby. I launched Deacon Coffee Co. The goal was to roast coffee from different regions, really good coffee, by the way. And then when people bought that type of coffee, give money to Compassion International and the work that they're doing in that specific country. The long-term vision was to have like a wall of kids that were being sponsored and supported through the revenue generated from the business. I never took it to that level because I was also working while I was doing it. But big piece of what I was doing is I was educating people about what was happening in these countries. What do I wish more people understood? The human beings that live across the world, these incredible cultures, amazing people, and we can practically do something to help make their lives better by funding, by buying coffee functionally, but by then generously giving and helping, meet whatever needs they had. It's mission. What do I wish more people understood? So if your why is mission driven, you're going to be talking like I am about this. I got this thing. You got to do it. This cause is so important. Mission is fueling your why. And then the last one here is lifestyle. I don't want anybody to think that lifestyle is not a legitimate reason to go freelance. It absolutely is. If you have a certain lifestyle that you really want, whether that be backpacking across Europe and running a business, out of your pack, whether that be traveling anywhere on the globe and still being able to do business, or whether it be you just don't want to work as many hours as, corporate America says that you should be working. Lifestyle is a perfect way to launch a business, or a perfect thing to kind of drive the decisions that you're making. Essentially, I want to build something that works for my life. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And ironically, lifestyle is actually a major driver for me, because as much as mission is driving so much of my passion and my heartbeat for these things, I need a lifestyle. I want to be present for my family, right? And so there has to be, a set of decisions that I'm making that are born out of the lifestyle driven why. So that's what's happening. So practical questions here. What kind of schedule or workflow helps me stay steady? What does my ideal week look like? What does it look like for you in an ideal sense to be building a business around your lifestyle? What does that look like? It's helpful to have a schedule. It's helpful to have some degree of a regiment, but that's something that's really important to consider, especially when you're building your why out of your lifestyle. You don't want to take on clients that are interrupting that. Occasionally I'll make exceptions. I'm preparing for a trip down to Texas. Actually, this episode is going to air just after I get back from that trip. That's an exception. I'm not going to do that all the time. If I had 10 clients reach out and ask me to travel on site, most of them would be told no. That's just not the business I'm trying to build. I'm able to make strategic exceptions, but it's not going to be the primary driver of the way that I do my business. And so I want to present to you those 4 different things, the 4 different drivers of why: craftsmanship, service, mission, and lifestyle. And the reason that this makes so much sense in my head, I hope it does in yours as well. When you start feeling tension in the purpose-oriented or mission-driven organization that you're in, and it stems back to, do I care about this anymore? I want you to stop trying to align yourself with that purpose. So my response to this was, I have to work really hard to care about the purpose. then I have to work even harder to care about the purpose. I'm just going to invite you into a little exercise. Pause that. All right? Pause trying to make yourself care more, and instead whiteboard it, write it on a pad of paper, whatever. Video yourself talking about it and then watch it back. Just pause for a minute and ask yourself, what is it that I really want to be doing? What is it that I am passionate about? Because I think what happens is the flame starts to flicker a little bit for us, meaning we were white hot for this thing. We were working hard. We were moving towards that mission. And then all of a sudden the flame started to like go down a little bit. And then it's kind of flickering, and we're kind of scared that it's going to go out. It shifts into this really interesting fear that it's going to go out. And I think some of that is because the context in which we're pursuing this mission is actually telling us that it's the only place where this can happen. And I just want you to hear from the outside, that's not true. There are tons of organizations that are doing similar work. There are a lot of churches across the globe. And so if you're in a church where you're not able to share certain ideas because they're not landing with leadership, they're not interested in moving in that direction, they don't care about, whatever it is that you're good at, there are probably churches somewhere in the country that are good at that, or that do want that, or do need that. And so don't fall into the trap of thinking where I am is the only place to do the work that I'm doing. And so even if it means that you don't go freelance, but you go to another church, or you go to another nonprofit, or you go to another agency, whatever it is that you're doing right now, where you're kind of falling out of love with it, don't get stuck thinking that that's the only place to do that work, because it's not. And then, of course, I wouldn't be doing this podcast justice if I did not invite you to start your own thing. Because let's say that you are at an organization and there's only one, you're the only person doing this type of work. Well, then maybe there needs to be somebody else doing that type of work. So you're still passionate about the work, you're still passionate about the mission, but you're not able to do it in a way that you believe to be as effective. Okay, start your own. That's what I'm all about. That's what this show is all about. Do it. Start your own thing, because you can. And I think that's the thing that's really powerful to me. I felt so stuck when I was in a place where I felt like I wasn't aligned with the mission. And I felt like I was supposed to be aligned with the mission. And I think worse, at one point I was aligned with the mission. And it felt like the perfect place. And everything felt like it was going in a good direction. And then suddenly it stopped and I didn't know what to do. And so I just want to encourage you that there are a lot of different things that you can do. Start thinking about craftsmanship. Do you care about that? Is that the thing that's driving you? Think about service. Is there a type of person that you want to be helping? Think about mission. Is there some big thing that you're trying to move forward in life? Is there some big idea that you wish more people knew about and bought into? Think about lifestyle. Is there something that's causing friction in your current place with the lifestyle that you're hoping to live? I found, especially later in my time, I found that lifestyle continued to get eaten into. I was continually pushed into a lifestyle that I didn't want more of, work even later, work weekends. Those are the types of things for me that moved me to the point where it's like, I can't anymore. So this is a really helpful list of questions to begin allowing yourself some freedom to consider maybe something different. I'm not saying you got to rage quit. I'm not saying that, you have to just leave immediately and like start applying it the first place you find. Not at all. Just go through the exercise of starting to understand what it is that you actually care about. I recognize that these are emotionally complicated topics. It was for me. I was very thankful to have a good friend that I could have conversations like this with. Without that, it would have been really difficult for me to make a decision. In fact, even with that, it was still difficult. It took many years for me to get to the point where making that jump was a clear next step for me. If you want a sounding board, hear this, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. Shoot me an email, matt@jumptofreelance.com. It's not a sales pitch. It's just a sounding board. If that's helpful for you, shoot me an email. We can set up a time and figure out a way to have the conversation. If you're worried about, NDA stuff, I'm happy to even do that to make sure that none of this leaves our conversation. But I do want you to hear this. If you are wrestling now, there's a good chance that you will only continue to wrestle more moving forward. And so thinking through some of these things and having these honest conversations is going to be really important for your future. Because again, if you're not loving where you are today, then you need to start moving towards tomorrow quickly, because time's going to pass, and it's going to pass whether you do something or whether you don't do anything. And the last thing that I want is for you to linger in a place that's not good for you and not helpful, and push you closer and closer to burnout. So instead, take advantage of the opportunity that you have right now in leveraging your time toward preparing for something, whether it's your jump moment or if it's moving to another organization. I'm rooting for you, and I'm rooting for you to be in a place that you love being. If I can help you accomplish that in any way, shoot me an email and let's chat.
Thanks for listening to The Jump Moment. To find support for your jump to freelance, join our community at jumptofreelance.com.